My name is Ken, and the other day I was watching videos on YouTube. And one of them was why people experience paranormal activity or feel like they live in a haunted house. One of the reasons that people experience things supernatural or paranormal is for a punishment of an action you did or didn't do. I found it interesting because about 4 years ago, I had a very strange and frightening experience. The job I worked for was changing things around, and it asked me to work later. So for a short period of time, I was driving home late night every night. One night when I was driving, it was cold, raining, and I was very tired. I wasn't used to the late nights just yet. As I was driving, I noticed a hitchhiker on the side of the road with his hand out asking for a ride. I never picked up a hitchhiker and didn't plan to then. In my mind, it was too dangerous. So I drove past him. I didn't look back at all. A few miles down the road, I saw another hitchhiker. It was like it was the same person that I drove past, but this time, they weren't holding out their hand. I was having trouble keeping my eyes open, so I stopped at the next gas station I found to get an energy drink. I went inside the gas station, grabbed an energy drink, and stood at the counter waiting for the cashier to come back, wherever he was. As I was waiting, I looked outside and it looked like the hitchhiker was standing in the parking lot looking towards the gas station. At that point, the cashier came to the counter, and when I looked back outside, the hitchhiker was gone. I thought I just needed some sleep. I got in my car and carried on driving home. About 5 minutes passed when I saw the same hitchhiker standing on the side of the road. I looked in the mirror and briefly saw a man in the back seat watching me. This scared me and made me jump so much I nearly lost control of the car. I stopped the car, got out, and checked the back seat and saw no one. I stood there trying to calm down and catch my breath. After calming down, I got back in my car and continued driving. The whole ride home, I was afraid to look in my mirror. Even though I didn't see that man again, I still felt him sitting there watching me. I never came up with a logical explanation of what I experienced that night. Before watching that video about paranormal crap, I always thought it was my lack of sleep that caused me to see things. But now I think what I was seeing was that man on the road and in my car was some kind of punishment for not picking him up. When I was 21, I transferred to a college in San Francisco. I checked out a room for rent on Craigslist. It was in a really nice 2-bedroom apartment. It was cheap rent and close to campus, so it was the ideal spot. The girl who lived there was 29 and her name was Beth. She was tall and pretty big, wide, and she had this jet black hair and wore pale makeup. She seemed nice, although a little quiet, but she seemed to like me and agreed to let me move in. So far, so good. My first night there, we went out for pizza, and that's when I could tell that something was a little bit off with her. Throughout dinner, she kept telling me how I looked like Shia LaBeouf. I didn't know what to say, so I just shrugged it off with a thanks. I look nothing like Shia LaBeouf, so it just didn't make any sense to me. When we got back home, she asked if I wanted to see her room. I said no, so she took me to see it anyway. Her walls were covered in posters of Shia LaBeouf. She even had printed out photos of him all over her mirror. She owned all of his movies also. I didn't know what to make of it. Honestly, it was creepy. The whole night she had been saying I looked just like him, and now it's obvious to me that she's obsessed with the guy. So a few weeks passed and I never really saw her that much. We didn't spend any time together, really. She would come home from work and practically run to her room. She would spend the whole night in there. She had this creepy high-pitched giggle and I would hear her giggling through the walls all night. I wondered what the hell she could be possibly doing in there. Occasionally, she would come out and talk to me for about 2 minutes. She would always be slurring her words, so I suspected she was drinking a lot. Sometimes she wouldn't say anything. She would just stand in the hallway and watch me in the living room, just standing still, not saying a word. I would turn and see her and be surprised and say, "Hello, Beth," and then there would be this long, awkward pause, and she would give out this creepy, high-pitched giggle. It was very uncomfortable being around her. She gave me the chills. So one night I woke up at around 2 a.m. because I heard what sounded like the front door being unlocked. I came out of my bedroom and all of the lights were off. But I could still see Beth standing at the front door. She had her face against it, and she was turning the lock back and forth over and over again. And every time she turned the bolt, she mumbled my name. Max Barker, Max Barker, Max Barker. Seeing her standing in the dark and mumbling my name really freaked me out. And it doesn't help that she kinda looks like a bigger version of the girl from The Ring. I just quietly went back to my room, but as I did it, I walked backwards. I got in my room and I just tried to go to sleep. One night I was watching Gladiator and she stumbled out of her room and turned the living room light on, forcing me to pause the movie, which was annoying. She then asked me if I wanted to hear about her ex-boyfriend. It was an uneasy segue into this topic, but I just said sure and then awkwardly sat back and I listened to her. 10 minutes into her story, she was so riled up. She was screaming at the top of her lungs about their breakup. I was worried that the neighbors were going to call the cops. She wasn't listening to me when I asked her to just lower the volume. Amidst all of her screaming, one thing she said that freaked me out, she was in such a fit and yelled, "I'll slit his fucking throat." That was a big game changer for me. Suddenly I had no idea what this girl was capable of. She was practically a stranger. Everything I had seen was becoming alarmingly disturbing. After a few more minutes, she told me thanks for listening and she started doing her giggle. I got out of there pretty fast and went to my room to go to sleep. I had a pretty unsettled feeling about being in this house with her. And what's worse is, there was no lock on my bedroom door. I pushed the edge of my dresser in front of it to act as a little barricade. I woke up in the middle of the night to the sound of my dresser scraping against the floor. Beth was pushing my door open. I turned on my light, shouting at her to stop. The thing is, I could see her through the opening of the door. She was so drunk and had this insane look in her eyes. I pushed the door closed and yelled at her to go to bed. I could hear her walk back to her room, but I couldn't fall back asleep. The next morning, when I went out into the hallway, my heart dropped. I saw one of her steak knives was on the floor by the door. I got goosebumps all over my arms. All I could think about was her saying that she would slit this guy's throat. I confronted her about it and she had said she didn't remember trying to push my door open. She said she didn't even remember telling me about her ex. At that point, I had enough. My lease was month to month, so I found a new spot and I moved out. About a month after I moved out, she contacted me. I was at the movies and my phone was off. When I got out, I turned my phone on and to my shock, I received 40 plus text messages that she had sent me over the past 2 hours. They were all just insane texts that ranged from everything between "Hi, how are you" to "I fucking hate you." It was insane. I didn't respond and I never heard from her again. I always wonder if I hadn't set my dresser in front of my door, would she have quietly come into my room and slit my throat? It still freaks me out to this day.